The next thing I'm going to be showing you is how to make your spark plug wires. Again, since all our lengths are going to be custom, you just pick up a universal kit. MSD makes some, Taylor makes some, Excel makes some. I went with the ICT, I think is what it is, ICT billet ones. It's actually right on the, ICT billet ones. Why? Because it's a balance of cost effectiveness and of course, quality. They make really good quality stuff. I use a couple of their items on the engine as it is, so I ended up going with their plug wires. Gonna go ahead and I'm gonna install this one, and then I'm gonna show you how to measure and make the next one. So what you basically start out with is like a 5-foot wire. Then you have your different boots. You can do straights, 45s, and 90s. For me, I'll be doing 90s, so that way it's easier to route and they don't stick so far off the plugs. Again, there is some for each use. It comes, the ICT ones anyway, with the coil side already done. Once we go ahead and we want to figure out our length, in my case, for my location, since mine are going to be right here on this plate, I'm going to be feeding it, like I said, just right down through there, away from the belt, but between this tensioner area. All I do is I feed it like so. Now I go to the other side and I pull the wire over there. As you can see, I've got my wire there. I have about as much as I want, so that way I can hook up my coil. If you have your coils handy, you can always plug your coil in and then route it exactly how you want it. Hold the wire up to your plug. One thing you can do too is slip the boot onto your plug and hold this right up to the boot. Then you mark it. From there, we know this is the bottom of our boot. I want you to measure 1 inch up, about that much higher. And what we're going to do is take our spark plug stripping tool, or as I should say, spark plug wire stripping tool. We're going to crimp it on here and we're going to pull the jacket. Now, another thing we can do is actually add on about, say, 3/4 of an inch, which is about right here again. What I'll do is I'll measure that out, add that on. So we've got our first inch. This is where we know we want to strip to. The next is we need to know where to cut the conductor, because we're going to have a conductor that's flapping around. So what you want to do is measure 3/4 of an inch or 1 3/4 inches from this line up here, and we're going to make another mark. At the 1 3/4 inch mark, go ahead and cut your spark plug wire. From there, next thing you're going to do, you have this tool, or you have, I think MSD has their own, which is a little vise piece. You would put the wire in it, and what you do is you spin the wire with an X-Acto knife in their recessed input, and it should slice about that length, as I should say, and it will strip where we need the conductor. If not, these tools are very cheap. They're about 20-25 bucks. Probably at your local hardware store, or grab one off Amazon, and you can see where the cutter is. So line these cutter teeth up with this one. It's going to cut all the way to this insulated piece right here, as you can see, the conductor, and then you're going to cut. I like to cut here and then cut one more time right there, then pull off, and it should take this whole jacket off. I'll show you that in 1 sec. Like I said, you'll get that double cut action going on. And then all it does is allows for a cleaner break off. Now that we have that, we know we can fold it, which is important for our next step. Notice I have the conductor bent backward. Next thing we need to do, let's see if I can do it one-handed, is you have to slide this piece on like so. Now I've slid too far up. You want it right about there, about 1/8 inch up. The other thing is you want, see how I have the conductor nice and resting against the whole back length as it's bent over? That's what you want. From here, I'm going to probably straighten that up just a little bit, just because I'm OCD and I want that right down the center. Then you're going to use that blimp looking one, and see how it's got, it looks like 2 of them are kind of round down in the center. Like I said, it looks like a fish or a blimp. Well, what you do is you line the 2 feet up, which are these 2, with the back of the blimp, And as it compresses, it's going to round them into the conductor. Before you crimp, it should look just like that. You should see just a bit of rubber hanging over top, and then when we crimp, it will sink into the insulator. When you compress it, as you can see, it'll look like that, and it's going to hold it nice and tight. Again, you can give it a pull test, but as you can see, it is really holding in there, and that's what you want to see. Because this is the whole spark plug wire, this is just a protector. It's the boot, kind of gives it a little bit of suction. So the next thing you're going to want to do, take some dielectric grease and you can cover this thing in it. Now, for some of you, you might be like, well, don't have to worry, don't have to wipe that off. No, you want to cover it in it, especially if you're in salty climates. Once you've covered the connector, and again, you don't have to worry because if you live in saltwater style climates, this is going to help protect it against corrosion from the salt water in the air. You're going to notice you're going to have a big end and a small end. The small end is the tighter end that's meant for this. The spark plug goes in that end. So go ahead and squeeze the boot in over top. Make sure it's like this. This will make sure the opening for the spark plug is aiming in the right spot. Squeeze it until it's all the way down. If you want, you can go ahead and remove the tape at this point. Slips on smooth like butter. Once you've gone ahead and you've got that, if you want to, this is technically complete. Unless you have to do the coil side, just rinse and repeat. Go ahead at this point if you want to, and you can label the firing order or however you want to label them, so that way, if you're doing multiple spark plug wires, you know exactly where this spark plug wire was made and created for. Now that we have our two measurements, let's go ahead and cut at that 1.75" mark. Next thing you want to do, grab your spark plug wire tool, unless you're using the MSD one. At this point, you would line this end up with the MSD block that they give you for the vise, and then there'll be a notch where you put your X-Acto blade. Go ahead and put it in that notch, turn the wire around in it, and it'll cut the wire. For me, since I'm using this tool, all I will do is line up the teeth, that's this jaw right here, on my mark. And all I do is just like that, cut in, and then sometimes I'll even rotate. Just make sure you cut it on the same mark and pull. As you can see, we now have our conductor. From this point, fold that back. What we would be doing is sliding this on, leaving about 1/8 of an inch, and then crimping. But if you notice, this is pretty loose in here. I like to have that a little tighter. So I'll usually take these needle nose and I'll turn them in a little bit. Just like that. We'll see if that works. If not, we might have to do it just a little bit more, just like that. When you do, now, when we fold this around, again, to the back, so that way it slides up the slide, or down the slide, if you want to say it that way, and just leave it right about there. Might even crimp that around the wire just a little bit more. I just liked it to be held a little bit more than that there. From here, go ahead. We're going to use this one. See how it's kind of like in the shape of a blimp? It's hard for me to show you. It's kind of like two little fishtail. I don't know. The fishtail lines up with these two ends because it's going to curl it and crimp it onto the insulator. So I might lose my shot here. I'm going to try and I want to make sure I line this up perfectly on my end. Just like this, and then bring it down. Again, keeping my position right there, and then go ahead and just like that. It's a little higher than I'd usually like, but it'll still work. Again, now that we've gotten this, let's throw a little bit of dielectric grease on here. Little, a lot, you do whatever you want. After you do that, give it a nice rub down. All right, now that we have that, wipe your hand a little bit, you go to your boot. you'll notice that your boot has usually two different sizes. Smaller side, bigger side. Bigger side's for the spark plug, smaller side is going to be for this end. You want to line this up so the tip of the spark plug, because that's what clips onto the spark plug, is going to line up with the big hole. So again, we're going to slide into the small, and this tip needs to line up with the big. Go ahead, work it in, and just press it in all of the way. As you can see, we're right at our tape line. And look, if you look down in there, you can see the silver tip. That's how you know you're good. Just rinse and repeat if you need to do the coil side. And of course, one thing you can do is use some red tape if you want to and label your wires depending on if they're going to be visible. If they're visible, a lot of people aren't going to want to do that. Again, just make sure you're hooking the spark plug up to the right coil. If you don't, then you're going to be out on the wrong firing order, and that won't be good. So again, that's why I like to always take a bit of tape, just a little bit down the wire since mine won't be visible, with red tape, and then put the firing order on the plug. So that way I can't mess it up. Another trick you can do too before you put the boots on is you can throw heat shrink on and write on the red heat shrink if you don't want to use red tape. There are so many different ways to mark your wires.